in the DS events calendar seminar. Today we are going to conduct our 30th seminar. The topic is Repro Toxicity of groundwater heavy metals. The speaker is Dr. Riaz Hussain, Associate Professor from the Veterinary and Animal Science Faculty. I will request the other research coordinators, please share the link with your research student, especially from the Department of Zoology, from the Department of Biochemistry and Biotechnology. The maximum students should take benefit from this talk. This talk will be recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel. I will request the speaker, please, you can talk 30 to 40 minutes. Then we have the question and answer session. And now I will not take more time. Mic will be handed over to Dr. Riaz Hussain. Dr. Sir, thank you very much. Please, you continue your talk.
Thank you very much, dear Dr. Muhammad Azam Khan, Director Advanced Studies, for giving me such an opportunity to have a talk in the DAS event. Kindly allow me to share the screen. Thank you very much, sir.
Edmund and Mazhar, please allow the screen share to the speaker.
Sir, rights से आपको दे दिए, check करें.
डॉक्टर साहब पहले अपनी पीपीटी ओपन कर लें कंप्यूटर पे, देन स्क्रीन शेयर वाला ऑप्शन ऑन करें.
जी जी, थैंक यू. मैं कर रहा हूँ सर. जी सर, हो गई शेयर?
Yes, now it's okay. Please continue your talk.
Thank you very much, sir. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear Dr. Azam Khan, dear colleagues and my students, the topic of my seminar is Repro Toxicity of the groundwater heavy metals. The contents of my presentation are including introduction about the groundwater heavy metals, then water quality status in the Pakistan, then sources of groundwater contamination, especially with the heavy metals, and then we will concentrate on the heavy metal reprotoxicity, means the toxic effect on the reproductive system of the body, and endocrine disrupting effect of the heavy metals, and at the end, the conclusion and the acknowledgements. Metals are actually, naturally existing in the ecosystem. These are heavy metals, may be defined as the metallic chemical elements which are having relatively high density above 5 grams per centimeter. There are two categories of the heavy metals. Some metals are very much biological essential metals which are need of the body for the physiological functions like copper, nickel, iron, zinc, manganese. And these metals are tolerable at the low concentrations. Even these are very much essential for the physiology of the body. Other category is non-essential heavy metals. And the examples are arsenic, lead, mercury, cadmium, chromium, and tin. These metals are very much toxic even at the low concentrations. Metals are actually found all over the earth, including atmosphere, earth crust, water bodies, and then these metals accumulate in the biological organisms, including plants and animals. These metals distributed in the environment through the volcano eruptions, spring waters, erosions, and through anthropogenic activities like the fossil fuel combustion, industrial process, wastewater effluents, agriculture activities, etc. The heavy metals actually bioaccumulate in the living organisms and human body, then compartmentalize into the body cells, stay there, become binded with the proteins, nucleic acid of the cells, and thus disrupting the cellular functions. Water, air, and food. Total environment is the main source of the heavy metals for the life on Earth, and the groundwater is actually a major source for the toxic heavy metals. Water pollution has proved as global threat to the human and animal health, and you know water crisis is another problem. So along with the water crisis in the developing countries, water pollution is a big threat to the human and animal health and food chain. Actually, the contamination or water pollution is either bacteriological through the bacteria or chemical contamination of the drinking groundwater, which is reported globally. There is the pictorial view in this picture. You can see in the picture A, the water crisis areas of the world, and the number one country is the Qatar, then Israel, then Lebanon, Jordan, Kuwait, Libya, Bahrain, Iran, Pakistan, and India, Oman, UAE, these countries, Saudi Arabia also, these are very much under the water crisis in the future. And along with this water crisis, Pakistan is and other world countries of the South Asia and South America. In the picture B, you can see red highlighted areas. These are the countries of the South Asia and the South America. These are very much affected by the groundwater heavy metals. So the groundwater is polluted with the heavy metals in these countries of the world. Swift industrialization with the time in the world and overwhelming civilization results into heavy metal toxicity, which impose the global health hazard threat. Heavy metals are actually...
Sorry to interrupt you. आपकी PPT नहीं चल रही स्क्रीन पे ना, पहली स्लाइड पे रुकी हुई है. हाँ, अब चलिए, अब ठीक. आप अपना जो कीबोर्ड ये माउस है ना, इसको ठीक, अब ठीक है
जी. ठीक है,
अब ठीक है, आप कंटिन्यू करें
जी. थैंक यू वेरी मच. सो द abrupt or swift industrialization in the world with the time and overwhelming civilization actually results into the contamination of the groundwater with the heavy metals, which impose the global health hazard threat. Heavy metals are actually strong biological poisons due to their continual nature and the accumulation in the body cells. These metals contaminated food and water, which is the major source of reproductive and health hazards. This metal poisoning reported as massive epidemic in most of the world, and particularly in Pakistan, India, in China, in Vietnam, and South Asian countries and some South American countries also having very much groundwater contamination and toxicity. If we concentrate on the water quality status in the Pakistan, the Geographical Information System and Water Quality Index studies of bore wells and open wells of this twin cities, Rawalpindi, Islamabad, reported that 50% samples were poor in quality for drinking due to bacteria and anthropogenic contaminations. In sectors I9 and G10, there is high quantity of the calcium, limestone, and magnesium carbonate in the groundwater. So it is very much threat to even these twin cities. And then in the most of the areas of Punjab, including Faisalabad, Rawalpindi, Lahore, villages of the South Punjab, Kasur, Gujranwala, Multan, Bahawalpur, Sheikhupura, and many other cities of the Punjab having groundwater contaminated with the WHO and PEPA standards for the bacteriological and heavy metal contaminations. So water is not suitable for the normal health of animals, for the use in the for lands, cultivation, and for the animal health. In districts Bannu, Swabi, Narangi, and Haripur of KPK, the water quality reported as poor and below the quality parameters of WHO. However, in other areas like Jamrud, Landi Kotal, Khyber Agency, Kohat, Lachi, and Nagar Valley of the KPK areas, these are having good quality water for groundwater for the drinking purpose and other uses, domestic uses of the human and animals. In 4 cities of Balochistan, including Ziyarat, Loralai, Quetta, and Khuzdar, the water quality is badly contaminated with microorganisms and heavy metals. The contamination and water shortage is a major problem in the many cities of Sindh, including Karachi, Khairpur, Hyderabad, Sakkar, and Larkana, and Thatta. So this sewerage, water mixing, chemical pollution, industrial effluents, textile dyes, pesticide, nitrogenous fertilizers contaminates the groundwater, and this is the major problem of all the provinces of Pakistan. And here in this slide, there is pictorial view of the areas of the Pakistan. You can see in the picture B, there is unsafe water in Balochistan, around about 86%, in Sindh 91%, in Punjab 91%, KPK 84%. So unsafe water is a big issue of the Pakistan. And in picture figure A, you can see the different levels of cadmium and other arsenic and other heavy metals in major cities of the Pakistan. Here in this slide, again, pictorial view of the status of the groundwater heavy metal contaminations in the different cities of major cities of Pakistan. In picture A, you can see the areas of Sindh, Indus River, central Punjab, and even in Islamabad and KPK and some areas of Kashmir. There is threatening level of the arsenic, even up to 200 microgram per liter in the groundwater. And in picture B, you can see the reddish areas. Unsafe arsenic levels is prominent from Sindh till the central Punjab and major areas of the Punjab and Sindh and KPK. Heavy metals, groundwater contamination and toxicity has led to a massive epidemic of heavy metal poisoning in many countries of the world. Studies conducted by the Pakistan Council of Research in Water Resources, PCRWR, reported that about 60 million people are drinking groundwater with elevated concentrations of heavy metal above the WHO standards, which are 0.01 milligram per liter for arsenic, 0.003 milligram per liter for cadmium, 0.01 milligram per liter for lead, and same like other heavy metals. So heavy metal toxicity may lead to developmental, teratogenic, carcinogenic, genotoxic, nervous, and reproductive disorders in human and animal species. 30% of clean water in nature is groundwater, and about 53% of world population is using groundwater as source of drinking water. So human and animal body system are exposed to the heavy metal through ingestion in the form of food and water. And this is actually a major issue of the developing countries because in these countries, people depend on the groundwater and surface water resources for the domestic use. The biotoxic metals in crops and subsequent and food chain pose potential risk to the human and animal health. In this slide, you can see the pictorial view of the sources of groundwater contamination, industries, municipal sewage, then urban runoff, the spill of the carriages, sanitary landfills. These contaminate the groundwater, and same agricultural chemicals, pesticides, nitrogenous fertilizers, these also contaminate the groundwater, and as a result, we use it through the municipal well, and then we use for the domestic purposes. Here in this slide, you can observe the heavy metal sources, cycling, and targeted vital organs. In picture B, first, you can see sources of the heavy metals are industrial product, burnt fuel, fertilizers, pesticides, which provide, serve as sources for heavy metals to the air, to the soil, and rocks in the earth crust are big source for the water. So this water, soil, and air leads to contamination or leads to the richness of this heavy metals to the plants, and then later on used by the domestic animals, birds, fishes, and then it leads to human beings. So this is a cycle of the sources of the heavy metals, then cycling through soil, water, air, and then organism ecosystem. In picture A, you can see some examples of the heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, lead, copper, chromium, and these heavy metals, you can see in this picture directly affect the osteoporosis, bony tissue, liver, kidneys, brain, lungs, spleen, immunological systems, hematological processes, cardiovascular system, and reproductive systems of the body, and leads to health hazards in the animals and human beings. Here is the, again, pictorial view of the heavy metal toxic effects. These heavy metals affects all the actually vital organs of the body. Here you can see in this picture, brain, and leads to headache, increase in strokes, basic ischemia, cognitive disorder, neurodegenerative illness. Then in respiratory system leads to chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, reduction in lung function. In reproduction, which is the main topic, fertility problems, miscarriages, fetal growth problem, premature birth, low birth weight. Then in cardiovascular system, changes in the heart function, increase in heart rhythm problems. Then in blood, it leads to passage of the pesticide through walls of blood vessels and blood flow problem, arteriosclerosis, reduction in the diameter of blood vessels, and high blood pressure. Now we are going to our basic topic, which is the heavy metal reprotoxicity, the toxic effect of the heavy metals on the reproductive systems. Normally, testes develop during early embryogenesis, due to testes determining factors which are SRY and related proteins and SOX9. Spermatogenesis process continues due to the hormones from the pituitary glands, which are LH and FSH, and these hormones released from pituitary under the effect of GnRH, which is released from the hypothalamus. This FSH having receptors on the Sertoli cells and LH having receptors on the Leydig cells. Sertoli cells involve and control the spermatogenesis, provide mechanical and nutritional support to the germ cells during spermatogenesis, and provide appropriate microenvironment through Sertoli cell blood-testis barrier. While Leydig cells produce testosterone and estradiol hormones, which are major androgenic hormones for the male reproductive system. Testosterone is major male androgenic hormone, while estradiol stimulate spermatozoa motility and act as a germ cell survival factor. Here is the pictorial view of the heavy metal sources and their effect on the male and female reproductive system. You can see natural and anthropogenic sources for the heavy metals like cadmium, lead, chromium, zinc, arsenic, copper. Some factors affect on the effect of these heavy metals on the systems of the body. And the factors are type of metals, oxidation state of the individual, dose and duration of the exposure to the individual. Then route of exposure is very much important. And then a mechanism of action after exposure. There are changes within the physiological status of the body, like reactive oxygen species activated, then leads to oxidative stress, and then leads to endocrine disruption, which leads to the poor semen quality in male, testicular structural damage in male, and as a result, affected spermatogenesis. And in females, leads to menstrual abnormality, ovarian structure damage, and affect oogenesis, and leads to female reproductive health hazard. Actually, lead absorbed through the GIT, lungs, and skin, and after absorption, it distributed through body, mainly accumulated in the bony tissues, then leads to teeth, liver, lung, brain, spleen, reproductive organs. And it can cross the blood-brain barrier and even placental barrier, and hence developing fetus is affected by this heavy metal. Its excretion is very much slow. 90% of this heavy metal bound to the RBCs, having high affinity for sulfhydryl group, and hence it impairs the zinc-dependent enzymes like gamma-amino livolinic acid dehydratase, which involve in the hemopoiesis, heme synthesis, blood cell synthesis, cytochrome synthesis, steroid metabolism, membrane integrity of the cells, metabolite synthesis, and vitamin D in renal tubular cells. So as a result, you know, all the systems and especially reproductive system affected by this heavy metal. Then lead. It occurs in three forms: elemental mercury and organic mercury is the major form. Elemental mercury oxidized in air and exposed animals and human exposed through the air. While organic mercury is liposoluble and well absorbed through GIT, lungs, skin, and it also can cross placenta and into breast milk. It develops into monomethyl mercury cations and dimethyl mercury enters food chain, binds to SH of membrane protein, and may lead to anuria, anemia, and anemia. While cadmium, the source of cadmium is tobacco smoke and groundwater. These are the main sources. It transported into blood bound to the meta-allothionein, very slow in excretion and affect the brain, kidney, liver, and reproductive organs. It binds to sulfhydryl group, displacing each metal of metalloenzymes and disrupting these enzymes, competes with the calcium for binding site on regulatory proteins and having lipid peroxidation potential and human carcinogen cancerous. Arsenic is a major reprotoxic heavy metal. It absorbs through the GIT and pulmonary route, accumulate in the keratin-rich tissue like nails, hair, skin, distributed throughout the body. It binds to sulfhydryl group of tissue proteins or enzymes, leading to inhibition of the enzymatic systems. It affects energy transduction reactions like Krebs cycles, phosphorylation, oxidative phosphorylation, inhibition of ATP production, oxidative stress, and steroidogenic hormonal disruption and infertility. So oxidative stress leads to the infertility. Here in this picture, you can see this mechanism. In picture B, you can see the heavy metals, UV lights, radiations, pollution. These are the inductors of reactive oxygen species, which leads to oxidative stress. And this stress leads to lipid peroxidation, protein damage, DNA damage, and as a result, necrosis and apoptosis of the cells. And this oxidative stress leads to impaired spermatogenesis in the male, asthenozoospermia in the males, impaired sperm function in the males, then germ cell DNA damage, idiopathic infertility in both male and female. This stress leads to tubal factor infertility, defective embryo development, pregnancy termination, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and endometriosis and female. Endocrine toxicity of heavy metal actually having major effect on the hypothalamus pituitary complex. You know, hypothalamus with GnRH stimulate production of FSH and LH from the pituitary glands. It is regulated by neurotransmitters. The heavy metals act as modulators of these neurotransmitters and alter the biogenic amine synthesis, increase norepinephrine, decrease dopamine concentration in anterior hypothalamus, and induces oxidative stress, apoptosis in the cortical neurons, impair GnRH synthesis and release, so inhibit the gonadotropin hormones and decrease the spermatozoa number and affect the hypothalamo-pituitary endocrine complex or inhibition. These heavy metals alters as a result the morphology of the certoli and leading cells, major germ cells in the male testes, and leads to leading cell tumor, inhibit testicular steroidogenic enzymes, which are 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase and 17-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, which leads to reduction of plasma testosterone, reduction and in testes weight, inhibition of sperm motility, induction of oxidative stress, and hence male infertility. Also, these heavy metals results in cancer of the prostate, azoospermia, deformities in the morphology of the sperm, development of the spermatozoa, and testicular functions. Here is the pictorial view of the schematic presentation of endocrine disruption. You can see here hypothalamo-pituitary glands, which secrete GnRH, and then hypothalamus secrete GnRH, which affect pituitary glands, which secrete LH, FSH. This LH having receptors on the leading cells in the testes, which are found within the seminiferous tubules. So the heavy metals affect direct to the LH and then affect to the LH receptors and impair the steroidogenesis, and as a result, systemic effects on the testicular tissues and impair the endocrine function. So the heavy metals affect the LH receptors, steroidogenesis, and hypothalamo-pituitary gonadal axis. Then FSH receptors are there on the Sertoli cells, which are found within the testes in the interstitium, in between the seminiferous tubules. These Sertoli cells are having FSH receptors, and these receptors are occupied or affected by the heavy metals and result into low spermatogenesis, decrease in the production of spermatozoa, and reduce semen quality and fertility in the animals and human beings, male species. Then disruption of ubiquitin proteasome system result in apoptosis in cells, inhibited proliferation of Sertoli cells, caused oxidative stress through lipid peroxidation, antioxidant enzymes inhibition, then DNA damage results into vacuolization of the in the cytoplasm of Sertoli cells and abnormal germ cells. Inhibit testicular steroidogenesis through reduction of STAR protein expression, inhibition of FSH release, and induces attrition of placenta, placental telomere, alters the stability of genome and chromosome integrity, which leads to deleterious effect on the developing fetus, embryonic defects. Exposure to the heavy metals leads to breast cancer in female, endometritis, endometriosis, endometrial cancer, menstrual disorders, abortion, stillbirth, and preterm deliveries. In case of female, again, the heavy metals are endocrine disrupting chemicals, which mimic and block the endocrine actions and interfere with the receptor binding, steroidogenesis, and metabolism of hormones. Disrupt and impair the hormonal secretions and receptor bindings, ovarian oocyte yield, decrease ovarian weight, decrease healthy follicular numbers, and increase atresia. Decrease uterine size, reduce uterine epithelial cells, decrease endometrial gland, numbers of the glands, thin the myometrial or uterine wall, downregulate messenger RNA expression and protein level of estrogen receptor 1, and reduce expression of vascular endothelial growth factor in the endothelium. Here is the pictorial view of female reproductive toxicity. Like males, the heavy metal affect the hypothalamo-pituitary gonadal axis, leads to the dysfunctioning of the release of LH and FSH, affect the LH-FSH receptors on the organs, the reproductive organs, and leads to the disruption of the hormonal release. Then also affect the development of the mature oocyte yield on the ovarian, in the ovarian cortex, and then also affect the uterus and leads to even cross the placental barrier, affect the fetus development, embryonic defects, and female reproductive toxicity. Alterations of steroidogenesis, delayed puberty, pregnancy loss, disorder of the cycle, premature birth, reduced birth weight, impedes progesterone synthesis by inhibiting expression of steroidogenic acute regulatory protein, STAR, and cytochrome P450 cholesterol side chain enzyme, which is P450SCC. Miscarriages, spontaneous abortion due to suppression of pregnancy hormone, and through placenta, enters the fetal circulation, blocking nutrients and blood flow, resulting into growth retardation. So from these overview and review, we can conclude that heavy metals are ubiquitous, represent a serious threat to the human health, on life, on the earth. Heavy metal enters the human and animal body, either from direct or indirect sources, and contaminate food chain of ecosystem and dangerous for survival of the life. It targeted all the vital organs of the body of human and animals. Chronic exposure causes steroidogenic dysfunction, fetal abnormality, embryo toxicity, endocrine disrupting act as this endocrine disrupting substance, and associated with estrogen mimicking action and reproductive physiological dysfunction. So environmental toxins harming your fertility and health. With this, I would like to acknowledge Directorate of Advanced Studies, Dr. Azam Khan, for this opportunity to discuss the view about the reprotoxicity of the groundwater heavy metals. You can contact me through this email address, and bundle of thanks for your patience. Thank you very much. Dr. Azam Khan, are you listening to me, sir? Hello? जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, थैंक यू वेरी मच. जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
Thank you, Dr. Sir.
बहुत शुक्रिया सर.
For your wonderful presentation. Now we have a question answer session. Any student, any participants, faculty member, and even student, if have any question, please raise your hand or unmute your mic. We can take the 5 questions maximum. Any student, any participant have any question about this talk, please can ask the question. डॉक्टर साहब, लगता है सबको बहुत ज्यादा समझ आ गई आपकी प्रेजेंटेशन.
या बिल्कुल समझ ही नहीं आई सर.
Anyhow, it was a wonderful talk. Today the topic was very important about the water, which is our basic need. Very thankful, Dr. Sir, for sparing your valuable time.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment for Dr. Riaz.
Please.
Sir, it was good, very nice, and very crisp presentation, and very well done. Thank you so much.
आप मैडम डॉक्टर साहब के डिपार्टमेंट से हैं?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Evelyn.
Doing appreciation.
So nice.
Anyhow, we are also doing the appreciation.
So nice of you, sir. Thank you very much.
And we will see each other in the next seminar, hopefully in the next week. Thank you very much, the participants with us. And this recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel.
So nice of you, sir. Thank you very much, all the participants. Thank you very much, Dr. Evelyn, for the comment.